Before we start the podcast, I just want to talk to you guys about Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast, and let me explain why. First of all, it's free, so you can get it anywhere, anytime, costs no money. Second of all, there's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, whatever device you choose. As well as that, Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more platforms. You can make money from your podcast too with no minimum listenership. That means a nobody podcast like mine can make money off of sponsorships. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So if you haven't tried Anchor or you want to start a podcast and haven't tried it yet, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's ANCHOR.FM to get started. What is up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Dillo's Dojo podcast. Today is episode, I believe, 32 or 33. I've honestly lost count. Today is the podcast that I am doing from my new setup down in my new apartment. Unfortunately, though, as of recording this, I am recording this the day after the fights, so the Sunday, but you all will not be hearing this until probably late Monday, maybe Tuesday morning, because unfortunately we had an issue yesterday when moving in. Everything else went smoothly. I'm just going to be honest here. Everything else went smoothly. The moving went great. None of the furniture broke. Everything looked fine. We got a lot of things all decorated and put together, putting things into places and stuff, and it looks pretty nice so far. Everything went smoothly, but when the internet guy came to install the internet, everything was going smoothly up until he had to go into the apartment building's like IT room. There was no superintendent on duty at all. Like, nobody. We couldn't even get an answer from their emergency line, even though that's what they say. Like, if you have a problem on the weekend, call that line. We couldn't get an answer from that. There was just nobody on site that could let him in. So unfortunately, I don't have internet until Monday, so that'll probably be when I upload the podcast. But as of recording, it is Sunday, June 13th, 2021, and last night we had quite a night of fights, so obviously we'll get into UFC 263 in a little bit, but we also had another circus fight, another circus boxing fight. And this time it wasn't some professional boxer going up against YouTubers or some MMA fighter going up against a YouTuber. This time we had YouTubers going up against TikTokers in a boxing competition. So it was an entire card on one side in the red corner, or whatever you want to call it. You had the YouTubers, and then in the other corner you had all the TikTokers. So we'll get into that in a little bit. Also, I wanted to kind of talk about the not UFC 260, Jesus, the Bellator 260 main event. It was pretty much a sleeper. Congratulations to Yaroslav Amazov, or whatever his name is, but it was just so goddamn boring. It was what you expected from a Ukrainian wrestle heavy man. I saw a lot of people talking about how the guy's just Habib but no smash. And that's probably one of the truest statements I've ever seen. But anyway, we'll get into that in a little bit. But I just wanted to kind of announce that, I'm down in the city now. I'm going to be having better internet. There's going to be a lot more podcasts. I'll be uploading to YouTube as well. I'll be probably streaming as well. And a new podcast will probably be coming soon with my fiance, so that'll be nice too. Also, real quick, shout out to her, because honestly, I couldn't have watched the fights last night if it wasn't for her. Like I said, we don't have any internet right now, but her family phone plan, her mom and her are just absolute amazing women. They said that I could use their unlimited data, so she hotspotted me, and I just streamed the fights off my phone. I bought the pay-per-view, streamed the fights off the phone onto my smart TV, and just watched them all night. So honestly, I honestly wouldn't be covering UFC 263 right now until Monday if it wasn't for her. So honestly, big ups to her. I absolutely love her, and her mom is the best too. So just a quick shout out to her, honestly. But anyway, so let's get into the Bellator 260 review. It was an okay card overall. I didn't get to see all of it because it was Friday and we'd literally moved everything out. and I was so tired. I just worked, and then we moved all that furniture from, our coworker's place, and then moved all that furniture from my place. So I just wanted to lay down and go to bed and get, moving day kind of up and coming and over with. So I just kind of went to bed. But from what I was seeing, and I watched the highlights in the morning when I woke up, it was a decent card. Other fighters had some pretty good showouts. Paul Daly, I guess, did okay. Fucking Aaron Pico scored a submission win, which was pretty nice apparently. And then obviously the main event, which was Douglas Lima, right? Right? Yeah, sorry, I'm just brain farting really bad right now. But yeah, Douglas Lima versus Yaroslav Amazov or something like that. And it was what you expected. I expected a lot better from Lima because honestly, man, like he's a top tier fighter. He's probably one of the better fighters that's not in the UFC. A lot of people say that too confidently, but he just had no answer for Amosov's wrestling, and it was just really upsetting, dude. Like I hated it, but yeah, it was a really boring fight. It was literally just him laying on top of Douglas Lima and just grinding to a decision, outpointing him, and that was literally it. And like obviously, it takes two to tango, so I mean, it's just as bad that we didn't, he didn't have an answer for Amosov's wrestling. But anyway, congratulations to Amosov for becoming the new Bellator welterweight champion. He's now 26-0. Like I said, a lot of people are comparing him to Khabib, but no smash. Like, it was really boring. A lot of people were like, I stayed up and watched this for this, and I was so glad I didn't stay up and watch it. So, it was just kind of a fucking shit show, I guess, the main event. But the other fights were great. So I watched the highlights, and the fights were great on those. So, honestly, great to Aaron Pico. He's called out somebody in the top 10, anybody in the top 10. He had a great show out. Had a nice, I believe, Anaconda submission finish, so that was really fucking nice. And then we had Invicta that night as well, but I didn't really look into it because it was the Phoenix Series 4, which I absolutely love, but it's that one-night tournament, so it's way too many fighters to kind of keep track of. But, yeah, I definitely will probably watch that and then cover it in the next podcast because I absolutely love Invicta's Phoenix Series. It's awesome. It's like a one-night tournament. I believe like two fights for each fighter in the tournament, and then there obviously is like a final, and then a main event, which is like another person, like just a completely off-brand fight. But I just love the whole one-night tournament format. It like kind of brings you back to like Pride and like the old UFC days. So I just love the Phoenix series. So Invicta's got some good shit going on over there. And obviously, we'll get into the YouTubers versus TikTokers because, like I said, it was a complete circus show. The YouTubers just completely wiped the floor with the TikTokers, which is just hilarious. But we'll get into that real quick. All right, let's get down to the brass tacks. Not UFC 263 yet. I didn't really want to talk about this event. I really didn't, but I need topics. I really need topics. Boy, am I desperate for topics. But anyway, so last night, as UFC 263 was happening, I believe it's called Social Gloves was the event's actual name. YouTubers versus TikTokers happened. The main event was Austin McBroom versus Bryce Hall, and then Anderson Gibb versus I can't remember the guy's name. And then Deji went up against Vinny Hacker and all that. Even Faze Jarvis had a fight, which was really fucking weird. Faze Jarvis, the kid gaming YouTuber. But anyway, yeah, so that happened last night. I didn't even know it happened last night. I woke up this morning, looked at all the results. So I guess without further ado, let's get into the results of the card because there's a little bit to talk about. Nothing of note. I'm just probably going to talk about the results and that's about it. But let's get into the results. So the card started with, I believe, Ryan Johnston versus Kale Suraj. I don't know these fucking names, so bear with me. I'm probably going to announce a lot of them very terribly because a lot of them are YouTubers I don't really fucking know, and a lot of them I don't know a single fucking TikToker. I'm never on TikTok, so that's gonna be double the problem for me. But anyway, it started off with Ryan Johnston, sorry, going up against Kale Suraj, I believe. And apparently, from the get go, Ryan Johnston just completely dominated the fight. And I believe in round two, ended up TKOing Kale Suraj, whatever his name is. And it was really early in round two, apparently. And then next up on the card was Landon McBroom. I don't know if he's got any relation to Austin McBroom, but he went up against Ben Azalart. Like I said, bear with me. These names, I'm not going to fucking be able to say most of them. A lot of them are pretty simple, like English names, but some of these are just kind of like weird. And I don't know these fucking TikTokers, so I don't know how to pronounce their names right away. Anyway, same thing. Landon McBroom came in swinging, hit some heavy-ass shots, outstruck Ben Azalart, whatever his name is, and TKO'd him in, I believe, the third round. Pretty brutally, too. That brings us to Faze Jarvis's fight. Yes, Faze Jarvis. Yes, I shit you not. The, I believe, Fortnite YouTuber went up against Michael Lay. And it was the only actual KO of the night, where I believe in the second round, Faze Jarvis hit him with a brutal shot that just dropped Michael Lay and obviously couldn't get up for the 10 count. The ref called it off, and rightfully so. Michael Lay got fucking laid out, apparently. After that, it was DDG versus Nate Wyatt. Sorry, that was the fight that I was about to talk about. Same thing. I believe it was very all DDG, all the way to the fifth round bell. It was just a complete striking clinic, and DDG ended up beating Nate Wyatt, I believe, by unanimous decision. That brings us to the featured fight, not the co-main or the main, but the featured fight, which was Deji. If anybody knows who Deji is, that's the little brother of KSI. He actually bloodied Jake Paul badly in their fight before getting TKO'd by him. That was when they were using headgear and shit. That was back in 2018. I remember watching that live. Yeah, I was stupid enough to watch that live. I didn't pay for it, thank God, but I still watched it live. I'm dumb. But anyway, so Deji was going up against Vinny Hacker, and it was actually a good fight. Deji was outstriking Vinny Hacker, not by much. Both guys were pretty neck and neck in strikes, and were hitting some pretty heavy strikes between the two of them, but obviously Vinny Hacker had the chin, and Deji didn't, and Deji just started to kind of slow down, was getting hit by shots, and the ref had to put an end to it, because Deji just couldn't continue, wasn't defending himself properly. But I have to say, like, I mean, yeah, he did good against Jake Paul last time he fought, but Deji looked pretty good in there against Vinny Hacker. Both guys were swinging, hitting each other with some pretty hard shots, so it was pretty interesting to see two guys like that. And it ended up being TikTok's only win of the night. There were, I believe, 7 fights. I want to say, no, 8 fights. One of them was a majority draw, which was the next fight, which was the co-main event. Anderson Gibb went up against, again, I don't remember the guy's name, but from the stats that I looked at, and I'm just going to say this, even though I'm not invested at this at all, like, I don't give a fuck, but I'm going to say this. So looking at the stats, looking at the significant strikes, the power punches that landed, that's kind of how you score a boxing fight. It's not like MMA where who's controlling the octagon, who's landing the takedowns and active on the ground. It's who is landing the more strikes, throwing the more strikes, who's more active. And some of the points are who's blocking, like how effectively are you blocking the other person's strikes. But anyway, so it was a pretty dominant fight, I believe, from what I looked at. Between Anderson Gibb and this guy. Anderson Gibb worked this guy all the way to a 5th round decision, and the decision ended up surprising a lot of people, made a lot of YouTubers that were watching last night very vocal, had me very confused when I was looking at the stats today, just to say the least. So it was interesting, to say the least, what the decision was, what they decided to go on with. So when the scorecards read out, I don't remember the exact score tallies, but the decision, even though Anderson Gibb outstruck this guy, worked this guy, just beat the shit out of this guy essentially. They announced it as a majority draw. Nobody got the win. And Anderson Gibb even said, like, hey, man, I respect you, but I won. There were so many people on Twitter replying to him and, replying to his post-fight interview thing, saying the same thing. Like, no, he won. This is so fucking rigged. Like, there's no way that was a draw. That was a decision for Anderson Gibb. Easy. Like, he did great. He looked great, apparently. But like, just looking at the stats, just from the stats alone, it's ridiculous that it ended up being a majority draw. So anyway, that's probably going to end up being ran back. And that brings us to the main event of the YouTubers versus TikTokers card. So, like I said, it was Austin McBroom, the Ace family's patriarch, up against a fairly famous TikToker. And the only reason I know who he is because he's famous. He's kind of expanded past TikTok now. But his name is Bryce Hall. And man, he had no business being in there with Austin McBroom. Now, don't get me wrong. Austin McBroom is not a boxer by any means. He looked like shit. But compared to Bryce Hall, he looked like Floyd Mayweather. And I'm going to explain why. Both guys had pretty meh boxing. But Austin McBroom is an athlete through and through. He used to play basketball in high school. I believe he had a college scholarship for basketball. He's got so many buddies that he used to be on teams with that are in the NBA or in, like, pretty big players in college basketball, like in the NCAA. So, you're putting this guy, you're putting an athlete, an ex-athlete who became a YouTuber who actually still works out. Like, he may not ball anymore, but he still works out. He goes to the gym. He has his home gym. He works out, has a training regimen. So you're putting a TikToker, Bryce Hall, who's not an athlete. He's just more of a pretty boy, going up against an athlete. And I don't know what they expected, because from round 1 to, I believe, round 3 when they called off the fight, because it ended up being a TKO win for Austin McBroom. Austin McBroom just outstruck Bryce Hall, hit him with so many heavy punches, just kind of pretty much slapped him around the ring like it was nothing. It was really funny, to say the least. But, it was just, looking at it on paper, I kind of looked at it when I saw the promos for it, and I was like, all right, that's kind of a weird matchup, but whatever, YouTuber versus TikToker. I'm not going to think about it too much. But now that the fight has actually happened, and I saw how badly Bryce Hall got beat by Austin McBroom, and honestly, man, it was probably a good thing that the ref called it off, because he probably would have just battered Bryce Hall. I thought about it. I was like, you're putting an athlete against just a pretty boy guy who kind of does pretty boy TikToks on TikTok, going up against a former high school and college athlete that's now a YouTuber that still goes to the gym and trains. I don't know what they expected. A gifted athlete is a gifted athlete, right? I don't know what else to say. Like, I don't know which way they thought it was going to go, but like I said, a gifted athlete is a gifted athlete. And I'm not saying Austin McBroom is a gifted boxer, he's probably not, but putting an athlete up against someone who's not a gifted athlete, who's just a regular dude, it's not going to go well if they both have the same level of boxing skill, right? That's just how it is, right? If you put two of the same athlete together with the same boxing skill, then you have an evenly met matchup. You have two athletes who are in shape, kind of in this type of fucking shape where they're going to fight each other. They're on a level playing field. But if you don't do that, you end up putting, like I said, with this guy, an athlete up against just a pretty boy. Yeah, no, that's what you get. You got a complete beatdown. I don't know what they expected, but the YouTubers ended up winning the entire night 5-1. Jesus Christ. But that being said, I wanted to talk about the event for a little bit because, I have a feeling they might actually do more of these. I don't know who's going to step up. I heard Faze Jarvis after his KO was feeling on top of the moon and was like, yeah, I'm going to do this again. If they have more events, I'll step up, I'll fight. So, if they end up doing more events, I wouldn't be surprised. It got a lot of buzz. I don't know if it made a lot of money, but I know it got a lot of buzz for casual fans, and that's essentially what they're trying to get in. That's why I'm not making too much of a big deal of it being a circus, because it's not like it's a boxer going up against YouTubers. It's YouTubers boxing TikTokers, so it's just bringing casual fans to combat sports. People who never would have thought to watch combat sports before, now they're watching it. Granted, it's not the best way to be introduced to combat sports, but it's probably the best way marketably to introduce casuals to combat sports. So, I wouldn't be surprised if there was more events like this, honestly. I honestly think there's going to be more events like this, in all honesty. But anyway, yeah, that was it for the YouTubers versus TikTokers. Man, it was a mess. That's all I'm going to say. I'm glad I didn't watch it. I'm glad I just ended up catching the highlights this morning, just looking at the results, because, yeah, again, it's one of those things where I'm so glad I missed it, like the Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather. I'm so glad I missed that fight. I'm so glad I missed Jake Paul versus Ben Askren. I ended up watching the UFC that night, I remember. So it's like, just these things I'm so glad I'm missing. But anyway, I expect more, honestly. I hate it. I don't want to see more, but I expect more because it brought a lot of casual fans. People who follow these TikTokers and YouTubers were talking about it. They were invested in their side. So I guess, it wouldn't hurt to have more of these, but I just don't like seeing them because, like I said, it's a fucking circus act. But at least it's, not really well-trained people going up against other not really well-trained people. So, it's not like it's Floyd Mayweather going up against fucking Bryce Hall or something like that. But anyway, I'll catch you guys in the second half because we're going to talk about last night's explosive UFC 263 card. I'll be covering all of the main card fights, and then I'll be getting into the results of the prelims because there were some pretty snappy fights on the prelims, including a 7-second KO, which is the fastest in the weight's history, and I believe the second fastest KO in UFC history. So that was pretty goddamn interesting. So I'm going to get into those. I will catch you guys when we cover that shit. Before we continue on to the fights, I just want to thank Smooth My Balls for sponsoring this episode. Ladies, fellas, let's be real. It's uncomfy to have a jungle down there, and be honest with yourself. Your significant other may not like it either. You don't have to worry about that anymore with Smooth My Balls Turf Chopper 3.0. This little bad boy has a diamond groove grip to make it easier to grip in the shower, as well as a long-lasting battery that is waterproof so it can be used in the shower as well. Also, if you're worried about cutting yourself up down there, well, then the Turf Chopper has you covered with its alloy polished blade that has a micro-sized teeth that makes it practically impossible to nick yourself down there. Also, cleanup is easy too with their Pube Muncher 1.0, a little hair vacuum-like thing that makes cleaning up your pubes as easy as clapping. So, if you want to stay clean down there, you can visit www.smoothmyballs.com/Dillo, that's DILLO, for 15% off of your order, or enter code DILLO, DILLO, at checkout for 15% off. Once again, thank you to Smooth My Balls for sponsoring this episode. Alright, let's get into these fights, man. We had, actually, like I said, last week, we had a stacked card of fights. That's just going without saying. We had a stacked fucking card of fights coming up. So last night, we had an incredibly stacked card, just the prelims alone. It started off with Carlos Felipe going up against Jake Collier in heavyweight, which Carlos Felipe won that by decision. And then in the next fight, we had Fares Zaim versus Luigi Vanderami, or Raminini, or whatever, at lightweight. And then after that, we had Chase Hooper making a return at featherweight against Steven Peterson, which at one point in the fight, Steven Peterson faked a glove touch on Chase Hooper, which you don't do that. MMA fans don't like that. First of all, MMA fans don't like fake glove touches. We fucking hate fake glove touches, for the record. But to do it to one of the nicest people on the UFC roster. Like, I know there's people like Roxy and, Wonder Boy, but Chase Hooper is up there. He is probably like the nicest kid. I'm gonna call him a kid because he's like a year or two younger than me, but he's the nicest kid on the fucking roster. He's so happy-go-lucky. He's got a great personality, a great attitude. And, MMA Twitter did not take kindly to Steven Peterson faking that glove touch. But unfortunately for MMA Twitter, Steven Peterson ended up winning that fight via unanimous decision. I was pretty upset about that myself. But after that, we had the explosive debut of Terence Mckinney. And my God, it was a 7-second knockout. The fastest in UFC lightweight history and the fourth fastest in all of UFC history. So Terence McKinney came out. They were kind of like bouncing back and forth, and then Terence McKinney kind of threw like a jab and like a hook, or more of like a right straight that dropped Matt Frivola, to the ground. And yeah, Terence McKinney just followed up and finished it within 7 seconds. It was fucking quick. And then to end things off on the early prelims, we had Pannie Kianzad versus Alexis Davis, which Pannie Kianzad actually ended up winning via decision. So we go on to the prelim card now, the regular prelims. We had people like Eric Anders, Drew Dober, Lauren Murphy, people like that making their fucking walk to the octagon, and some of these people are actually fan favorites. Not big names to casual fans, but fan favorites nonetheless. To start off the regular prelims, we had Movsar Evelev going up against Hakeem Dawodu, and Evelev ended up winning that via decision. And then up next, we had a great flyweight bout between women, which was Lauren Murphy going up against Joanne Calderwood. If I remember correctly, Lauren Murphy is on a winning streak, I believe. I believe she's been on a winning streak for a while now. I think like a 3-fight winning streak, I believe, maybe 4. But anyway, she finally earned that shot against a very top contender in Joanne Calderwood, and just fought a very close fight between her and Joanne. And my God, it was such a great fight between the two. But Lauren Murphy ended up just edging out the decision, 29-28 split, I believe. I wasn't mad about the decision. Lauren Murphy fought her ass off, and so did JoJo Calderwood. Like I said, I wasn't mad with the decision. It was a close fight, could have went either way. But congrats to Lauren Murphy. And then next on the fight card, we had Eric Anders versus Darren Stewart, which was a rematch of their last fight, I believe, that happened in March, where Darren Stewart, Eric Anders kneed Darren Stewart while he's on the ground accidentally in the heat of the moment, and they had to stop the fight because it was an actual bad knee, and they ruled it a no contest. So this was a rematch of that, and Eric Anders just came in and fought his ass off and dominated to a unanimous decision against Darren Stewart. So getting that one on his resume must have felt really good. But to headline the prelims, this is the fight that I wanted to talk about on the prelims, other than the Terence McKinney debut. Drew Dober and Brad Riddell, this was supposed to happen, but it got called off, I believe, for medical issues or something, so it got rescheduled. And my God, these guys put on a clinic. It was just a technical fight, striking, grappling, everything you wanted, back and forth. It was so close. They were showing their absolute grit and heart. They were just throwing bombs, just beating the shit out of each other, just showing their cardio, and it was just an insane back and forth fight. It ended up winning fight of the night too, so if that tells you anything, considering we're moving on to the main card here, and we had a great fight on the main card. I mean, we had actually a couple great fights on the main card, but we'll get into that in a bit. But nonetheless, my God, man, Drew Dober, I believe, ended up winning, Drew Dober ended up just losing 29-28 against Brad Riddell, but it was a fucking close fight, and it was back and forth, and definitely a fight of the year contender. I wouldn't say it's definitely fight of the year, like, guaranteed, but it's definitely a contender. It's a great fight, and I'll definitely be going back to watch that probably after I'm done this podcast, because, I don't have the pay-per-view anymore, but I still get the prelims, so I'll just catch that fight again and watch it over again, because it was honestly that fucking fun. It was awesome. But anyway, that's it for the prelims. Like I said, we had some stacked fucking prelims, folks. Like, I'm telling you, these prelims were stacked from top to bottom. And then on top of that, the main card that we're about to get into was stacked from top to bottom. We had Paul Craig going up against Jamal Hill. That had bad blood. And then Bilal Muhammad making a return after getting eye poked by Leon Edwards against Damian Maia, which it could very well be his last fight in the octagon. So that was awesome. And then we had a 5-round non-title bout, non-main event fight between Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz, and that was fucking awesome. And then we had 2 title fights, a flyweight title fight, a rematch of what my opinion was fight of the year of 2020, Brandon Moreno versus Davison Figueiredo, and then obviously a rematch of a 2018 fight between Israel Adesanya and Marvin Vittori for the middleweight straps. So we'll get into that. But like I said, stacked main card, stacked prelims. This was an amazing fight card from top to bottom. I've heard it on several MMA podcasts throughout the week. Usually the June card is sort of a dud. Like the only good fight is usually the main event or maybe the main and the co-main. But this time, the June card is actually pretty goddamn solid, if you ask me. And it ended up churning out pretty damn solid. So without further ado, let's get into these fights. Because I know you guys are itching to get into these fights now that I'm done talking about the prelims. So to start things off, like I said, we had Paul Craig going up against Jamal Hill. Paul Craig being the 14th ranked light heavyweight in the UFC. Jamal Hill just edging his way into the top 15 rank. And throughout the entire fight week, there was just nothing but bad blood between these guys. They were just jawing at each other during press conferences, at the weigh-ins. It seemed extremely heated between the two. There was just nothing but bad blood between these guys, and I was expecting nothing but a great fight, and that's exactly what we got. The fight started out awesome, where Jamal Hill came out strong, throwing strikes, but not too much. It was more so he threw a couple strikes here and there, bounced around trying to find his range. Paul Craig would answer back with a couple strikes of his own, and that was pretty much the course of the fight for a little bit. But then it got to the ground, and Jamal Hill did really good on the ground, kind of controlling Paul Craig, but then he got back up to his feet, and they started striking for a bit until Paul Craig and Jamal Hill initiated a clinch, and Paul Craig pulled guard. And then that was it. That was all. Like, Jamal Hill did great on the ground, defending sub after sub, but Paul Craig, man, showing why he's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, just chaining sub after sub after sub, constantly making Jamal Hill defend. And then he got an armbar locked where Jamal Hill rolled with the armbar, but so did Paul Craig, and he was just cranking that arm to the point where, like, at one point during the roll, he just cranked the arm the wrong way over top of, like, his knee or something. And then they got into the straight armbar position where Jamal Hill was kind of stacked, but you could see his arm was dislocated. Like, it wasn't the right way. It was floppy. He didn't have any control over it. And, you know, fucking Paul Craig just started, like, he locked him up in kind of like a triangle armbar position and started hitting him with some hammer fists, which ended up causing the ref to stop the fight. And now, here's the kicker. So I looked on Google today, and I looked on Wikipedia for the result just to double check. When I was watching last night, they issued it a TKO, okay? But when I checked on Wikipedia and on Google this morning, it was a submission, because technically it was. And they ruled it a technical submission. So I don't know what to call it here. Some people are saying it's a TKO because he essentially caused the ref to stop the fight due to the punches that Jamal Hill was taking. But some people were saying that the ref stopped the fight because he finally realized Jamal Hill's arm was just completely fucking mangled. So I don't know, but all I'm going to say is Paul Craig completely demolished Jamal Hill on the ground after a while and ended up just getting that finish. And it was a nice finish. It was a nasty, nasty submission. So congrats to Paul Craig. And honestly, that win makes me really happy because I've been seeing a lot of people on MMA Twitter talking shit about Paul Craig, saying that if the triangle choke wasn't invented, he would be a McDonald's employee or whatever. He wouldn't be a fighter. Just essentially fucking discounting his skills. And that just shows, man, that Paul Craig is dangerous on the ground. It's not just the triangle choke. His bottom ground game is fucking dangerous, and you shouldn't be willingly to go into guard with him. But anyway, that's it for that fight. So Paul Craig wins via TKO or technical sub, whatever way you want to look at it. The next fight is a welterweight bout between Damian Maia, 9th ranked Damian Maia, and I believe he's like 13th ranked Belal Muhammad. So Belal Muhammad has been on a constant winning streak until recently when he went up against Leon Edwards, and it ended up being ruled a no contest because he couldn't continue after a couple of eye pokes that Leon had landed on him. But honestly, if you want my opinion, Leon was kind of working him that whole fight anyway. But anyway, so he's going up against an absolute grappler ace, a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu legend in the UFC, Damian Maia. This man has been in the UFC for, God, I want to say like 13, 14 years, maybe a little longer. He has fought everyone and anyone there can be in the middleweight and welterweight division. This man has been to both sides of the spectrum. He has fought everyone that has come that way and has beaten some top prospects as well as lost to some top prospects. So it was Belal Muhammad's time to shine against Damian Maia, and I kept thinking, I was scared for Belal because, you know, Damian Maia has very slick submissions, but the thing is, Belal Muhammad has decent striking, and Damian Maia, even though he's been in the UFC for probably like 13 years, 14 years, been fighting for more than 20, the guy has absolutely abysmal striking. So I was hoping that that's where the fight would remain, and that's kind of how the fight remained. So the fight started out, they were both on the feet, Damian Maia kind of controlling the distance of the octagon, but Belal Muhammad landing his shots, and then Damian Maia throws in a single leg and lands Belal on the ground against the cage, but Belal springs back up to his feet, right? So this kind of just showed what the course of the fight was going to be from here on out, and I was right. So the rest of the fight was just Belal Muhammad kind of moving around the octagon, picking his shots, hitting some decent shots, and just outstriking Damian Maia. Well, Damian Maia really did nothing with his defense other than try to land a single leg, and after that first single leg landed, I shit you not, Belal Muhammad defended every single one of them. There was, I believe, like, I want to say close to 20 takedowns attempted, and only one was landed. Belal Muhammad defended up around 94% of the takedown attempts from Damian Maia and just completely dominated him. Now, the decision, on the other hand, the scorecards were read a little weird. One judge saw it 30-27 for Belal Muhammad, which I kind of thought that was the case because, you know, yes, Damian Maia took Belal Muhammad down in the first round, but he didn't do anything. Belal got right back up to his feet, reversed the clinch, and split, and then just continued to outstrike Damian Maia. And after that, Damian Maia attempted to take him down, but Belal Muhammad would just defend it with ease. But the other two scored it 29-28, thinking that Damian Maia won the first round without question. Personally, I don't think that's the case because I feel like Belal Muhammad did enough to gauge the round out for himself because he outstruck Damian Maia. And the way you score a MMA match is you score it based off of effective striking, grappling, and then octagon control in that order. And like I said, the only grappling that happened in the first round was Damian Maia taking Belal Muhammad to the ground and Belal Muhammad just popping right back up to his feet. And then after that, there was no grappling done by Damian Maia. He tried to initiate it, but it just wasn't happening, while Belal Muhammad was just punching him in the face constantly, landing fucking body kicks and trying for head kicks and stuff. It was just all Belal Muhammad, and he ended up winning via unanimous decision, so there you go. But that brings us to the Leon Edwards versus Nate Diaz fight. Man, we're only halfway through the main card. This is the third fight of the night, the featured bout before the main and co-main, and it's a 5-rounder. And I have to say, this fight was fucking fun. And I'm going to say it. I don't get what the hate of Leon Edwards is. A lot of people are like, oh, well, what's to like? See, I'm not out to find something to like about Leon Edwards. I'm out here trying to find something to hate about Leon Edwards. And I can't find a single goddamn thing. The thing you might hate about him is he's boring, but to me, that's not enough to completely dismiss a fighter's skills. Yes, a fighter can be boring, but that boring skill can be completely overwhelming to all opposition. Look at Khabib Nurmagomedov. The guy wrestle fucks all of his opponents, and they can't do anything about it. Just some people are just good at that skill, so that goes for Leon Edwards. He is great at counter-striking and kickboxing, and that's how he fights. And his personality isn't the most exciting, but that's okay, right? He is a top contender, and he's going against Nate Diaz. And the showcasing he showed last night was incredible. Nate Diaz and Leon Edwards went back and forth, but obviously each round, Leon Edwards would just gauge it out by outstriking Nate Diaz. But Nate Diaz was in the fight. There was not a single moment in the fight that Nate Diaz was far out of the fight. There was a couple times where Leon Edwards looked like he hurt Nate and just started flurrying on him, but there was not a single moment in the fight that Nate was out of his depth, was out of the fight, completely, hurt or anything like that. But I did notice he wasn't taking it seriously. He was doing technically what Nick did against Anderson Silva. If you guys remember that fight, Nick Diaz would lay on the octagon and go Anderson to get on top of him and stuff. And while Nate wasn't doing that, he was kind of doing little dance moves in the octagon and kind of stopping and turning his back to Leon to tease him and stuff like that. Just doing stupid shit like that. And that led to the end of the fight where within I think maybe 2 minutes left on the clock, Nate hits him with a right straight, or maybe a Stockton slap. Some people were saying it was a Stockton slap, and then throws a left overhand and lands it. And I kid you not, had Leon Edwards on Bambi legs, literally legs like a baby newborn deer. He was just wobbling. He had Leon Edwards hurt, and instead of trying to finish the fight, because he really had Leon hurt, he had Leon really fucking hurt. He could have finished it right then and there, but instead of doing that, you know what Nate does? Because Nate is trying to copy his older brother, he points at Leon and starts laughing and lets Leon recover, and then just starts trying to walk Leon down. And he was more so looking for a power shot, and Leon would just duck under it, take a couple of his rabbit punches, and then duck under the power shot. And after Leon recovered, Leon did an incredible job defending against the onslaught of Nate Diaz. Nate Diaz fucked himself over. He could have finished that fight. But anyway, the fight ended with a 49-46 across all judges' scorecards for Leon Edwards. And honestly, even though Leon Edwards completely dominated that fight and Nate Diaz got close to knocking him out, Nate Diaz still came out the favorite, because pretty much all of MMA Twitter is still hating on Leon Edwards, and I don't know why. Because he showed he has heart last night. He showed that he's tough, and he showed that he deserves to be in there with the best. Whether he can beat Kamaru Usman is a different question, because it seemed like he struggled with Nate Diaz. But see, the thing is, Nate Diaz has this journeyman record, but he's no slouch, man. He's just a guy who loves to get hit. He loves brawls no matter what, win or lose. It's like he doesn't care about winning, and that's the thing about Nate. But it doesn't mean that he's a shit fighter, right? So anyway, that was that fight. It was a great fight. Unfortunately, didn't win fight of the night because we had something better with Drew Dober and Brad Riddell. But man, it was an awesome fight. Definitely worth the wait. It's a little upsetting that it wasn't the co-main event of UFC 262. But like I said, definitely worth the wait. Both guys brought it, man. It was fucking awesome. That brings us into the co-main event of the evening. The first title bout of the two. The first rematch of the two. Brandon Moreno challenging Davison Figueiredo for a second time for Davison's flyweight belt. This fight happened in around November or December of last year, and it was a complete barn burner that, honestly, I'll be real with you, Figgy won, but had points deducted because he literally booted Brandon Moreno in the balls by accident, to the point where Moreno was on the ground coughing and gagging, but Moreno got back up after he kind of recovered and his balls didn't hurt as much, and gave Davison Figueiredo a run for his money. So it was a close fight nonetheless, but like I said, in everybody's opinion, Figgy just edged that out, and if he didn't get that point deducted, he would have won. And this rematch probably wouldn't have happened, but nonetheless, it was a constant barn burner. It's probably one of my favorite fights in UFC history. It would have been made a lot better had the crowd been there. It was in an empty UFC Apex, unfortunately, because it's the pandemic, but had it been in a packed arena, that fucking fight would have been explosive. But anyway, So these two are making the walk, staring at each other across the cage. And now, I noticed something leading up to this fight. And, I mean, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I've had the strong feeling, and I wasn't the only one. I saw this as like a popular opinion almost on MMA Twitter. Figgy was getting in his feels. Moreno was in Figgy's head, in my opinion. Figgy was trying to hype up the fight and be the bad guy because Moreno's too nice. And it was clear that Moreno could tell. Moreno did not give a shit. He just, every time he would get jawed at, he would laugh and just, whatever. Or, he got pushed at, I believe, the weigh-ins or something, and he literally just laughed in Figueiredo's face. Like, he was clearly not getting in Moreno's head, and the fact that Moreno wasn't being bothered by it bothered Figgy. So anyway, Brandon Moreno just looked on point last night. That's all I can fucking say about this fight is Brandon Moreno looked on point with his striking. He looked like he showed up well. Figgy looked like he just wasn't himself. He was getting completely dominated on the feet, on the ground. It was, I believe, in the second or third round, Figgy ended up getting to the ground with Brandon Moreno, and it was the third round, I think. And Brandon Moreno was just dominating Figgy off his back, and he eventually just locked this submission in that was tight as hell. Just fucking locked that shit in like it was just, he was hugging. It was like he was hugging Figgy like Figgy was going somewhere, and he was never going to see Figgy again. But instead of hugging Figgy, he was hugging Figgy's neck. And it was brutal. Figgy had to tap. But despite all the bad blood, or whatever you want to call it, between Figgy and Moreno, the post-fight was just amazing between the two. So Figgy's sitting there. He's upset, but Moreno's about to get crowned the champ. Moreno's like practically bawling like a baby, man, because he's worked so hard on this point. And I gotta say this, he has had one of the most inspirational stories to become champion in the UFC other than Michael Bisping. This guy he showed up on the flyweight season of The Ultimate Fighter. He was picked dead last out of every single flyweight. He got cut from the UFC only to try and earn his shot back in the UFC in LFA. And he became the LFA champion. Came back to the UFC, struggled a tiny bit until he started earning like a big win streak, and now he is the flyweight champion of the world. Not only that, but the first Mexican-born champion from Mexico. I shit you not. It's a first for Mexico in the UFC. Yes, I guess Cain Velasquez did not count. Maybe because he was fighting out of America, I don't know. But he is the first Mexican-born champion that's coming out of Mexico. And I was so happy for him, man. He was so happy. He was so happy for his country. He was screaming "Viva la Mexico" and shit in the post-fight. His post-fight was just so endearing. When he got crowned the champion and he was crying, Figgy went over to him and picked him up and, like, didn't parade him around the ring, but lifted him up and raised his arm. Like, yeah, this guy's fucking awesome. Like, it was just so heartwarming, man. Like, as much as Figgy was being a dick to the lead-up, he really showed up, and he was all class at the end of that fight. But that was it for the flyweight bout. Congratulations to Brandon Moreno. My God, I'm so happy that he's the flyweight champion. It could have went either way, honestly, but, it couldn't have happened to a better guy. He's so down-to-earth. He's a nerd. He's a fucking Lego nerd. He loves Funko Pops. He's just a down-to-earth, like, kid, almost. He's just a cool guy, and I love that he's the flyweight champion. And him and Figgy definitely brought some life back to the flyweight division. Definitely did. I love DJ. He will always forever be my all-time favorite fighter. He was my first ever favorite fighter, and he was one of the reasons why I started kind of taking up boxing a bit, because he's 5'3", I'm 5'1", and it kind of inspired me that if a guy that short can fight in the UFC and be a champion, then why can't I, actually start working on myself? So even though that's the case, he didn't really do well at promoting himself in the UFC and promoting the flyweight division. So these two are doing an incredible job, especially Brandon Moreno, because everybody seems to be endeared with his happy-go-lucky, like, I'm awesome personality, and he's just so down-to-earth and very, like, chill. I just love it. I'm so happy for him. But anyway, that brings us into the main event of the evening. The main event is the rematch between Israel Adesanya and Marvin Vittori for the middleweight title. This happened, I believe, April of 2018. They didn't fight for the title. It was, I believe, a 3-round fight. Both guys fought very closely. Marvin Vittori edged out the final round when it was 1-1, in my opinion, by taking Israel down. But Israel looked good and was on the offensive for a good portion of the fight, so I could see why the judges scored it that way, and I wasn't mad about the decision. But Vittori, on the other hand, the other half of this fight, was upset about the decision, and for the last 3 years had been going on and on about how he won that fight and how he deserves a rematch against Israel Adesanya. Well, that time has come, dear Marvin Vittori. Did you show up? Because Izzy did. Izzy showed up, man. Marvin Vittori had a very clear game plan, obviously. And it was the game plan that everybody thought Yan kind of etched into history books on how to beat Israel Adesanya. But the thing people keep forgetting is that Jan Blachowicz is like 205 pounds when he cuts weight, right? But he walks around at like a heavyweights limit, like probably 230, 220, 240. Izzy's nowhere near that. Izzy probably walks around at like light heavyweight limit, like 205, 210. So you got to think, a guy who is naturally just much bigger going against a guy who is skinny and has less of a weight advantage is going to get wrestled to the ground on the outside by a man who's actually pretty fucking solid with wrestling at the same time. So even though it is a solid game plan, you have to be a pretty big, sizable guy for middleweight, and you have to have like really decent wrestling to dominate Israel Adesanya to a decision. And that's not what happened. Marvin Vittori tried to initiate that shit, but Izzy did an incredible job at defending takedowns, and Izzy just put on a complete striking clinic. Just popping Marvin Vittori in the head with head kicks, punches from the distance, just completely outstriking Marvin Vittori through all 5 rounds. There was not a single moment of the fight where Vittori looked like he came close to winning a round. It was a complete 50-45 all across scorecards, unanimous decision, dominant victory. And after the fight, I didn't like Izzy's call-out. It's a good call-out, and I'm happy that that is probably going to be the fight that happens next because it needs to happen. I want to see Bobby Knuckles up against Izzy again. I just didn't like how he called out Bobby Knuckles. I know you're supposed to hype out the fight, but it was like a low blow. So this Marvin Vittori fight wasn't originally supposed to happen. It was in talks, but it was originally supposed to be Robert Whittaker versus Israel Adesanya 2. But Robert said, because they offered the fight, they were like, yeah, it's going to be like probably 3 weeks after your Kelvin Gastelum fight. And he just went to war with Kelvin Gastelum at this point in time. He said no, he wants time to recover and spend time with his family before he trains for the title fight. And that's understandable, man. He'd just been away from his family for probably months. And on top of that, when he got back from fighting, he had to be quarantined from his family for 2 weeks. So you have to feel for him. And Izzy knows that because they're from around the same area. Izzy being from New Zealand and Robert being from Australia, both of which have the same guidelines when it comes to coming in and out of country due to the pandemic. So I thought that was a pretty big fucking low blow that Izzy brought that up essentially and said, we're going to be fighting on my time in Auckland whenever I want, motherfucker. You know why? Because I'm the fucking king. And that was probably the most cringe shit that I've ever heard. But I definitely am 100% down for that fight, and it was a great showcase for Israel Adesanya. Now, he struggled against Marvin Vittori. I feel like he should have finished Marvin Vittori with the type of fighter that Vittori is. So I could see him probably struggling with a improved Whittaker. Who wins? I don't know. It's anyone's to decide, but honestly, I'm excited for that fight, and that is definitely the fight that needs to happen. But Izzy being, the guy who's down to earth, who wants to be the guy who's down to earth, isn't really showcasing himself to be the guy who's down to earth. That being said, as much as I hated how Izzy was acting last night after his fight, I have to give it to him. The man is a man of the people. He's a man of the fans. So, you guys remember Booger Beard, right? This is going to be the final, this is going to be the last of the podcast, but you guys remember Booger Beard. Well, it seems that he kind of struck up a friendship with Israel Adesanya before he got chased off of Twitter by Phil the MMA douche. So I guess, yeah, he struck up a little bit of a friendship, would send requested videos to Izzy of him saying he's going to KO and then fellatio Izzy, stupid shit like that. Izzy loved it, and he struck up a friendship. And the best thing ever happened to Booger Beard. I'm so fucking happy for him. And the pics that resulted from it were just so heartwarming. But anyway, so what Izzy decided to do was he just ran, because he was allowed to give away a couple of free tickets. And he had a couple of free tickets to give away. And he hit up Booger Beard and McMalley MMA, two pretty high-profile MMA Twitter accounts, and offered them tickets. And offered them to go to the after party afterwards. And guess what? They were floor seats, baby. They were right by the fucking octagon, right behind that, like, divider that divides the crowd from the fighters and the rest of the cage and shit. Yeah, they were right behind that. Izzy came up to Booger Beard after the fight, put the belt on him, gave him the belt and said, like, yeah, take a picture with that man, looks good on you, and then took the belt back, took him to the after party afterwards. There's pictures of Booger Beard, like, chilling and talking with Izzy at the after party with a drink in his hand. It was fucking awesome. It was a great moment for the MMA Twitter community, because the fighters are fully acknowledging us fans now on MMA Twitter, instead of just the wannabe reporters or the up-and-coming reporters. They're actually, like, engaging the fans, the people with podcasts, the people with, streams where they stream UFC 4, but they're big MMA fans. Like, they're giving those guys the me time now, and I love that. So big ups to Izzy for doing that, and I'm so fucking happy for Booger Beard. Anyway, that's it for the podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode, this special episode from my new apartment. Unfortunately, you probably won't be hearing this until later Monday, probably Tuesday morning if I schedule it for then. But after that, the podcasts, I'll be trying my best to keep them on schedule. They'll be on every Monday. I have better internet now, so it won't be a problem. I'll probably be streaming a lot more now. I will see you guys in the next episode, and that is going to be for the Korean Zombie versus Dan 50K Ige. Anyway, guys, I'll see you guys in the next episode. Peace out.